We are in the midst of the NFL offseason, and it's time to have some fun. Amir's joining the show. We're going to be ranking the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL as of today. Let's get into it. All right, on your screen now, just some quick notes that I want to run you guys through. I am on the green numbers. Amir has the red numbers. We both ranked our top 32 guys, and we averaged them out. So that is how we got our list today, just like we did last year. And you guys loved how we did it last season. So, hey, we brought it back. Amir, how you doing today, man? It's a controversial show, to say the least.
Very controversial, but like I always say, rankings are always going to vary, no matter what. At the end of the day, it's the top four quarterbacks, and it's the rest of the league, that are mostly interchangeable. And, as long as the reasoning behind each ranking is honestly valid, I'm not going to argue anything. So,
yeah, now, again, at home, we're not going to go through every single quarterback and go through a deep dialogue. If you have any questions about a quarterback that we don't cover in today's show, drop it in the comments, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. But, Amir, I have some interesting notes here to throw out for the show today. The biggest riser on the list, when we look at quarterbacks that were eligible for last year and this year, Jayden Daniels went from unranked. I'm not going to spoil where, but he's pretty high up on the list. And then the biggest faller from last year to this year is our very own Deshaun Watson, as much as I hate to say that. He went from number 19 to unranked this year. So just some things to look out for. 6 new quarterbacks entering the list this year. One of them hasn't even played in the NFL yet. The biggest difference last year when we look at the list, Amir, of course, when we look at my rankings and your rankings, the quarterback that we disagreed the most on was CJ Stroud. There was a 7-spot difference. Why am I bringing this up? Well, this year, we went up that. There's a quarterback on today's list that there is an 8-spot difference, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Also, hey, there's a lot of big differences here, Amir. There's a lot of big differences. There are 9 quarterbacks on today's list that have at least a 5-spot difference. And I hid this list from Amir. Ladies and gentlemen, I did not want Amir to see the list ahead of today's episode, so there should be a bit of a surprise factor there. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. At 32 is Jameis Winston. There we go. That's a better way to start the video. America's favorite quarterback, America's favorite reporter, maybe, after he was at Super Bowl weekend. He's going to get a nice payday wherever he goes for whatever role a team wants to give him. Cam Ward, this is my fault. Okay, I have Cam Ward on here because I think his poise.
You told me no rookies.
I said that I was going to put at least one rookie on there. And well, if you want to put Shedeur, Cam Ward, I think they're already better than Jameis Winston, as crazy as that might sound. But Cam Ward, his poise, I think he has multiple arm angles, and I think, again, his processing speed is the reason why he's going to be the number 1 pick. Don't believe these smoke and mirrors, okay? Tennessee or whatever team has the number 1 pick is going to draft Cam Ward. That's just what's going to happen. Right now, they're just trying to test the waters and see if a trade gets thrown at them, as crazy as what Chicago and, again, Carolina did a few years ago. At number 30 is Justin Fields. Amir, you're higher on him than me. But Justin Fields, look, he played great to start the year. After that, got replaced. And now we're kind of wondering, what version of this guy are we going to get going forward? That's the question the team's going to have to answer. 28A and 28B, Michael Penix, Anthony Richardson. Both these guys have a lot of potential. Penix just got the job at the end of the year, but I think he looked really good. And it might be a hot take, but I think he's already better than Justin Fields. Sure, Fields has shown a little bit more at the highest level as a starter, but I think Penix, just with his arm ability alone, I'm taking that going forward over Justin Fields. Richardson, we're just going to leave it at that. Derek Carr and Drake May come in at 26A and 26B. Look, we had them at 25 and 26. We literally just flipped the spots. Derek Carr, very solid veteran quarterback. I'm interested to see if he stays with New Orleans. According to the interview from Kellen Moore, looks like Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback for the black and gold next season. And then Drake May, to me, I think he might be the second best quarterback in the previous draft class. I think when the careers are all said and done, it's going to be either Caleb Williams, Drake May, or it's going to be Jayden Daniels, Drake May. I don't think that he's left out of that top 2, when their careers are set and done. And then here we go, a 6-spot difference between the guy to round out the bottom quarter of the list, Bryce Young, I have him at 22. Amir, you're not as high on him. You have him at 28, under guys like May, Carr, and again, he's right there with Michael Penix in your rankings. To me, Bryce Young, I think, showed a lot. And Amir, I like quarterbacks that have that mental toughness, that ability to bounce back. Bryce Young, he did not look good in his rookie year. Comes in a year two, new head coaching staff, and he looked terrible to start the year. Got replaced by a 38-year-old quarterback. And then when he finally got his opportunity again, seemingly with his career on the line, he stepped up to the plate and he played his best career football. I have Bryce Young at 22 for those reasons. I believe what we saw at the end of last year will translate going forward. Amir, your thoughts on any of these quarterbacks on the bottom quarter of today's list?
So for me, this is really tough. Outside of Cam, honestly, outside of Cam Ward and JMO, really from Bryce Young to Penix, no, really Bryce Young to Fields, all these are all interchangeable in my opinion. I've been a Bryce Young believer. I've been high on him.
Yes,
I
yes.
still believe in him. I believe in him and Dave Canales. Coming into the season, just for me, the only problem I have with Bryce Young is it's kind of similar to last year. He started off really, really bad. Then once his team's out of playoff contention, his team looks really, really bad. That's when he really shows out. When at that point you're not really under much pressure. And so for me, I'm still going to be somewhat critical of Bryce Young. I believe he had a better season than honestly all these guys mentioned. Just for me, it's the fact that he starts off slow, really, really struggles. Then that second half of the year, when he's not really under much pressure because the team is already 0-8, out of playoff contention. That's when he performs. But I think from here on out, going into next season, Bryce Young will finally prove people wrong. And I've been believing him. I still believe in him. I believe in Dave Canales. I just hope they really, fill these holes in this roster.
Yeah, Bryce Young, look, in his defense, I'll throw this out there. The team is just it's not the greatest roster, top to bottom. And then going into this past season, they traded away their best player in Brian Burns for not a lot. So in his defense, again, very young roster, but I understand what you're saying there. But let's get into the next 8 names here on the list. And this is the biggest difference, Amir. Any guesses? I'll say this guy does not have a current team. I think technically he's on a team, but he will be cut here in a couple weeks, and he's going to be looking for a new home in 2025. Any guesses here? Someone that you got at 21. Any guesses from you?
Man, I got an idea. I'm thinking, say he's a free agent, doesn't have a team, so I'm assuming Kirk Cousins.
That's exactly who it is. Kirk Cousins comes in at 24, 24A. To me, look, I'm the reason why he's this low on the list, but I'll tell you why. Going into last season or this past season, sure, he had the one Thursday night game where he went crazy, he had 4 touchdowns, but outside of that, he lost any mobility that he did have. He was a statue back there, and it was more of a detriment to his team than actually helping his team win games. And this is a team that had a relatively easy schedule when we look back on it, and they weren't able to get over the hump. They weren't able to pull away from that division and win it like they should have early on in the season. But for Kirk Cousins, again, the turnover issues, he's definitely lost a step. And granted, he did have some big-time knee injuries, so I don't want to say that he all of a sudden just sucks. He's just old, and he just had some pretty horrific injuries, and that's why I don't think he's the same quarterback anymore. So to me, going forward, I'd rather have a lot more. I'd rather have 28 more quarterbacks than Kirk Cousins for my team. Unfortunately, Amir, we're Browns fans. He's gonna be a Brown next season, and I'm gonna have to sit here and defend Bryce or Kirk Cousins. But why do you think? Why do you still have him at 21 despite the down year and getting replaced by a rookie late in the season?
So I'm at 21. I have a couple guys underneath him. Just off my memory, I have 2 younger guys, and I also have a guy that a veteran guy that's a bit more proven. For me, for Kirk Cousins, I'm a big Kirk Cousins believer, but honestly, everything that you mentioned, I really can't argue against it. And the thing about the Falcons that was really interesting was like beginning of the year, the offense looked horrible, the defense looked great. Second half of the year, no, really the first half of the offense looked great. The defense looked horrible. It was a flip flop. Second part of the year, Kirk Cousins turning the ball over. He had the 4th interception game against the Chargers. At home, the offense started to go downhill, and the defense played better. And so I think, for Kirk, that Achilles injury really caught up to him. And looking at the tail end of the season, man, like his arm power looked dead. I mean, like it was times he was going to throw out routes to the field and just throwing pick sixes, throwing interceptions.
And that,
Just for me, I just think he's still more proven than the guys that have underneath him. He's still a veteran guy, and it's like I'm kind of looking at it from a Browns perspective, where it's like, if I want to have, a guy to really teach our young quarterback coming in, I'm choosing Kirk right now.
oh, no doubt. And again, I don't want to say that he doesn't, have one of the higher IQs in the game. He's been around for a long time and he's won a decent amount of big time games despite the narrative early on in his career. Kirk Cousins, to me, like you mentioned, it was what have you done for me lately? And those last like 5 or 6 weeks before he got replaced,
They were
just
horrible.
they weren't good at all, right?
They
And
were
that's
horrible.
kind of I think that's kind of harnishing where I have him on my list today. At 23 across the board, not many times you see that outside of maybe the number one spot. Caleb Williams for the both of us, again, rookie quarterback, first overall pick. Going forward, you got to get the ball out quicker, and you can't get sacked 60 plus times because some of those were on Caleb, and some of
Yeah.
it was on the offensive line, which no doubt needs to improve going forward. But Caleb Williams, he's going to get better going forward, ladies and gentlemen. Just give him some time. To me, the second best rookie quarterback from this past season was Bo Nix. I have him a couple spots above Caleb Williams. Is it a hot take? I don't know. Look, this is a guy that from day one was handed a Sean Payton complicated offense, and he got better
Yeah.
every single week. And not only that, he won. So he got this team, despite having not the greatest weapons offensively, to the playoffs. And I understand Sean Payton is a Hall of Fame, one of the greatest coaches of all time. I mean, I got a Drew Brees ball back here, right? That's how much I love the duo of Sean Payton and Drew Brees. But to be a rookie quarterback and then to come in and just to lead this team to levels that nobody really saw this team going, I thought was very impressive. And I had him just a couple spots above Caleb. Russell Wilson is currently looking for a new job. As of right now, they said that he's not returning to Pittsburgh. Honestly, he might end up in the black and silver there for Pete Carroll for the Raiders. At 19A, 19B, we have Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold would have been the biggest riser on this list if Jaden Daniels didn't have one of the best rookie seasons ever. But Sam Darnold, a tremendous year. I just think that whether if he's a starter going forward or not, whether if he's good at all going forward or not, I just want to give him his flowers for having the world doubt him and seemingly count this Minnesota team out simply because of him. And for him to come out, answer to prove these guys wrong and to have a career season. And not only that, but at some points in the year, we said he was in the MVP conversations. That's how good he was. They won, 14 games? No matter what happens going forward, I think this was an incredible season from Sam Darnold. And then at 17A and 17B, we have Tua tags, and I have him 6 spots higher than you. But Brock Purdy is 18 pretty much across the board there. Amir, I was surprised you had Brock Purdy so low, man. I think he had an incredible season. I think this year was more impressive than the year they went to the Super Bowl from Brock Purdy with all the offensive line issues they had and with all the inconsistent injuries around him. For him to still play really good and keep that team in a lot of one-score games, I thought that this year was more impressive from Brock Purdy. But why do you have him not higher on this list? That's my question to you.
Honestly, really, Brock Purdy, Geno, and Darnold, those three I struggle with ranking the most, especially Tua as well. I think all four of these guys are kind of in the same tier. When it comes to Tua, on the other hand, I mean, Tua has had loaded rosters, and he shows improvement, but it's like whenever he faces against these somewhat competent defense, these competent teams, he folds. I mean, he went ahead, faced Buffalo and got smoked. I mean, faced the Texans, completely, choked the game away. Playing these teams that have winning records. For Geno Smith, I mean, Geno, the thing about Geno was I think people undervalue how great this Seahawks roster is. And,
Yes.
I'm a firm believer that it's like all the guys that have over them, I truly believe if you place them in Seattle, they honestly play better. And, Geno, times throughout the season, turn the ball over in the red zone at crucial moments, putting the ball in harm's way. And then for Sam Darnold, people might go ahead and disagree. Sam Darnold, for me, I'm not going to let one season, for me to go ahead and boost him up to a top 10 quarterback status and completely ignore all the, the past stuff that he's done. Now, I give him his flowers, but, from here on out, for Darnold, I kind of want to see it again. For Brock Purdy, finally. For Purdy, I've been high on Purdy. I thought this season was really a good season for him overall, individually. And the fact that, he had the shoulder sprain rush back, still played, pretty solid to put his team, in jeopardy to somewhat, maybe sneak into the playoffs at the end of the year. But, for Purdy, it's really just tough because when a guy sort of has a year, like a breakout year that's somewhat questionable, other than that next year, deal with injuries and, still just doesn't have the production you're really looking for. It's hard for me to really, put him up higher, really,
Yeah.
kind of boost him up even more. And so for that reason, I have him at 18.
I do want to say this in the defense of Tua and Geno Smith, and as well as one more quarterback that I know you hate, but we'll mention him later. According to PFF, the bottom three offensive lines were Cincinnati, Miami, and Seattle. So Seattle and Miami did struggle to protect their quarterback. Uh, Apparently not as bad as Chicago because Caleb Williams got sacked like 65 times.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. Chicago's offensive line, a lot of it was on Caleb, but my goodness, that O line is horrendous. And
Yeah,
I hope they do not go into this next season with that O line like that.
no, again, well, we're going to be doing a mock draft pretty soon, but I do want to say this about Sam Darnold to go back to your earlier point. And again, you gave him his flowers, but you said next year, hey, it's time to prove it. As I always say on this channel, it's one thing to have expectations. It's another thing to live up to them. I got to get that on a t-shirt, man, because I'm saying it a lot here over the years. But again, Sam Darnold, it's time to prove it. Now we don't have any ties here in the, I guess, the top half. We're now into the top half of the list as we get into, again, the top 16 quarterbacks. Amir, this is a guy that last year I came onto this show, this exact show with you, and I was trying to convince you that this dude should have been higher on the list. And now it's to a point where I think I've seen other quarterbacks around the league, like a Brock Purdy, that has had not necessarily the perfect situation, but they've went out there and they produced and they've won games and they've done individually great things. Trevor Lawrence, Sunshine is an amazing quarterback. I think he still has the potential to be a top 10 guy in this league. Am I being too harsh on him having him at 19? Absolutely. But this is because I think I'm being harder on him because I know the potential that Trevor Lawrence has, and that's to be a top 5, top 10 guy for the rest of his career. It hasn't been there. And I understand that there's been some injuries around him, but he arguably has the best weapon of his career now in Brian Thomas Jr., and he just didn't look great all year. I want to see Trevor Lawrence come back with a chip on his shoulder and prove us all wrong and not necessarily be an MVP guy, but be in the conversation for some weeks along the season. That's all I want to see from Trevor Lawrence. We'll come back to him in a moment. Kyler Murray, K1, K. Dot, Dachshund in the desert, whatever you want to call Kyler Murray, but he is my second favorite quarterback in the league. I just like him. He's fun, and I think on both of our lists, Amir, he moved up exactly one spot. So, again, he's an above-average quarterback. We respect him. He started the year off great. Outside of that, kind of mellowed out. A guy that doesn't have a job, Amir, right now is Aaron Rodgers. 17 on my list, 12 for you. Last year, Amir, do you want to take a random guess? Where do you think we had him as a collective on our list last year? Like, take a random.
I had him at like 5.
He was 5th as our collective on our quarterback list going into last year. And I apologize if I was the reason why you started to believe in the Jets because I was drinking the juice. But Aaron Rodgers is still a good quarterback. I mean, he had a career, not a career. What I wanted to say is, and he said it himself, a career year for others is a down year for Aaron Rodgers. And that's exactly what happened last year. And I mean, hey, he had a great statistical year. I do want to say that sometimes it didn't look great, and a lot of those numbers did come in garbage time. But regardless, I'm interested to see where he goes from here. Amir, your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers being in the top 14 despite not even having a job?
Yeah, it's really just crazy because, I mean, honestly, like that 12 to like – I feel like that 12 to like 17, 18 range is so interchangeable. It's really just tough. And like you brought up a great point. I mean, Rodgers had a complete down year, and it's still better than like 70% of guys on this list, which is crazy. Like he started the season off really, really bad, turning the ball over. The offense looked completely dead and just slow paced. But really, like it was like a middle part of the season where the offense really started rolling in that second half of the year.
Once they got Adams,
right? Yeah, exactly. He got Adams and everything, and so. For me, Rodgers, the arm talent is still there. The production dipped a lot. The mobility is definitely lower. But I think, for Rodgers, it was more so just a cultural issue. And it's the same problem that's been going on with a lot of these quarterbacks in the league where it's like, you try too hard to really keep, guys' jobs. Like there's no reason why Hackett should have had that much control over the offense.
Right.
The whole entire year there was no motions, no type of like complicated scheme, schematically to really put pressure on defenses really, and the offenses look completely just dead, slow pace, and it's too old school sometimes. And so I think it's really just problems beyond Rodgers as to why the offense really looks super inconsistent.
And this could be a one word answer, Amir, but if you're Aaron Rodgers, is it a team that you're looking for? And give me that team if you have one in mind. Maybe Pittsburgh, maybe the Raiders, maybe Seattle, right? Maybe he takes over Geno's job. Or would you retire? If you're Rodgers, what's the thing you're doing this offseason?
So if I'm him, like if I have a mindset where it's like I have no family to really take care of, I have no wife to really take care of. I'm not really under much pressure to really retire and move on to my after retirement life. I mean, personally, if I'm him, I'm really trying to target a true contender. Like I'm making sure I keep my eyes on the Rams, see what they do with Stafford.
Right.
I'm really making sure I keep my eyes on teams that potentially move off. Pittsburgh as well. And so, if I'm him, that's really what I'm doing. But, if it comes down to where I have to play for a team like the Raiders or, a poverty team, honestly, I'd rather just retire.
I still can't believe the Rams are actually trying to trade Matthew Stafford. I mean, he got you a Super Bowl. We'll talk about him
I
in a
don't think
moment.
they will, though.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think they're just kind of testing the waters.
Yeah.
13 across the board. Again, one of the like 3 or 4 quarterbacks that we have exactly the same. Dak Prescott at 13, moving down a couple spots from last year for the both of us. Last year, you had him as a top 6 guy. Going into this past year, it just wasn't pretty, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
everyone was on pins and needles in the organization. We kind of knew that it was a make or break year, and it broke. Mike McCarthy he didn't even get fired. He stepped away as the head coach because of all the dysfunction in this organization, and they're just a cheap organization. I do think that going into the offseason with a new coaching staff, maybe they go out there and grab an Ashton Genty. Maybe they grab some offensive line talent. Make Dak Prescott's job easier coming off this pretty horrific knee injury. But interested to see what he does going forward.
Yeah, man, their run game was like the worst in the league. I mean, like that was one of the worst run games I've ever seen, to the point they had to go pick up Zeke to run the football, and Zeke played so bad to where second half of the year he didn't even touch the ball.
I do want to say Rico Dowdle was 1,000-yard rusher, first
He
one
was.
that they've had in like over
It
a
didn't
decade.
feel like it though, which is crazy.
Right. I think it was their last
It did
one
not
since
feel
like
like it.
DeMarco Murray. As crazy as that sounds, man. I'm getting old. At number 12 is Baker Mayfield. I have him at 10. You got him at 15. He's just someone that I want to root for. When I'm watching Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield, I'm like, man, I say it every time I see him play. I'm like, I wish that would have worked out in Cleveland.
Yes.
He didn't want to be here, and I know the media likes to paint everything bad on Cleveland, but Baker refused to get certain surgeries done
Yeah.
that we asked him to do, and medical professionals advised him to do. He really just didn't want to be here anymore, and again, that's why we kind of moved on. But I love the player of Baker Mayfield. If I had to choose any quarterback, he's not the first one, but he's up there because you just want to root for him. He's the guy that you want to lead your troops down. I guess, again, you just want to ride with Baker Mayfield is what I'm getting at here. And again, career year for Baker Mayfield across the board. So that's why I got him as a top 10 guy. I understand, though, why he's on the outside for you. Jared Goff, despite the horrific playoff performance after seemingly playing with a concussion and probably partial CTE, it was a tremendous year for Detroit.
Yeah.
He had a good year, maybe not as good as 2 years ago, but he did have a good year. And Jared Goff at some points in the year was in the MVP conversation, so he's there at number 11. And number 10 is Jordan Love, my favorite quarterback and maybe my favorite player in the league. I've been on this bandwagon for a long time, Amir, since he was at Utah State, those ugly jerseys. But I've been on this train for a long time, and I think that last year wasn't the year I was expecting. I wanted him to improve on the playoff year 2 years ago. I wanted him to, even though statistically, even if he didn't look better there, I wanted him to just look more comfortable, process the field better, make these throws, get the ball out on time. In his defense, Green Bay did have a bottom 5 offensive line. They had more than double the offensive line combinations than any other team in the league. So obviously they couldn't stay healthy there. But and again, they also don't have a true number 1 wide receiver. Some things went against Jordan Love, but also, like I mentioned with other quarterbacks, that's when you need to make everybody better. And I want to see Jordan Love have a little bit of a better season. And this year, the CJ Stroud of the list is Jaden Daniels. Last year, there was a 7-spot difference where I had Stroud at 6. you had him a little bit lower. This year, you got Jaden Daniels at 6, and I got him at 11. Amir, why should I be higher on Jaden Daniels after, again, seemingly a historic rookie season?
So for me, you know the one rule I always hold when it comes to rookie quarterbacks.
That's why I was surprised.
I never ranked them high, but I'm not gonna lie, man. I about halfway through the season, I saw people already putting Jaden Daniels as a top 5 quarterback. And me personally, I always wait. I think people do quarterbacks a disservice of ranking them too high early on. To once that sophomore year comes and they struggle, they boost them right back down. And for Jaden Daniels, I really looked at his year, and it was really when I sat and I watched that Lions game, I was like, okay, for this one guy, I have to make an exception because this is, the first time we've ever seen anything like this. And so, my criteria usually doesn't break, but this is the one time I had to put him at 6, and especially because, I thought outside of the top 4 quarterbacks, really after that, like 5 through 10 was so up in the air and it's switchable. I mean, Stroud had a down year. Jordan Love didn't really, produce more this year. Jalen Hurts, played good, but it's like, he has the most loaded roster in the league around him. Stafford, dealt with some problems as well too. And so, I kind of looked at the structure of, 5 through 10, and I'm like, man, like this is so up in the air. Like, I have to put Daniels at 6 because he not only, overperformed, but he literally played on all time heights. And so he played way too great for me to really put him lower than 6.
I do want to say this. Last year, before Jaden Daniels took over at quarterback, and of course he was in college, but last year when they had Sam Howell as the starter, this was a bottom 5 offensive line in the league. Amir,
They were
any
horrible.
guesses?
They were horrible.
Where do you think they were this year? They were
Honestly,
top
I'm gonna be
3.
honest. Like watching him this year, watching how good he threw against the blitz, watching how great he didn't take sacks. Looked like a true vet and poised in the pocket. I wouldn't be surprised if it was top 10.
They were top 3, Amir. And
Like
I
that's
think,
crazy.
like you were just talking about, he made them a top 3 offensive line
He
because
did.
of how much he got the ball out and how, effectively they were able to move the football. Jaden Daniels was that good that he made them. He literally pushed this offensive line up 24 spots in the rankings, according to PFF, because he was that good in his rookie season. Amir, any other quarterbacks here in these 8 that you want to touch on before we get into the big names?
So honestly, really 2 quarterbacks. Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence. Jordan Love, in my opinion, and I think the term overrated gets like a negative picture painted on it when it's really not always bad, but it's more so the criteria that I always hold, where it's like people kind of do players a disservice of putting them borderline top 5 players early on.
It's like
Then
a
it's like once
seesaw.
they either
Yeah.
right. And so once they either don't produce or they show a sort of regression, they boost them back down. I think Jordan Love was way too overrated after last season. Like, let the guy develop first. Let him get better before you put him at borderline top 5. Like, I saw people, Packers fans putting the Packers as automatic, top 3 contenders. And I'm like, Jordan Love last year, that was basically his first rookie season where he took control of the offense. The O-line was really bad and stuff like that. And so, let him really develop first before we really, put him in conversations, because it sort of sets him up for failure. And so, for Trevor Lawrence too, everything you mentioned is completely true. I mean, this guy, has unlimited potential. And it's like when I look at him, it sort of reminds me, about Stafford when he first came into the league, a bottom tier team. He has pretty good numbers to start the, his career off, but the team is just so bad and, this constant struggle. And I think for Trevor Lawrence, next year, like if they make some reasonable moves, like if the O line gets better, the defense gets better, because the defense is a major problem
The
too.
O-line can't get
Um,
worse.
no, seriously, the O line was horrible this year. I don't care what PFF says, the O line was consistently getting worked the whole entire season. And so, like if the Jags could do better, offensively, the O line could be better too, and he shows some improvement. I'm probably still going to have him, around the 14 mark.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I think that's more reasonable. I think that's where he should be. You're right. An above average quarterback. Like I mentioned, I was very harsh on him because I just want to see the dude be the guy that we projected him to be out of
He can
college.
be great.
Which again, he arguably was the greatest prospect ever. I think the highest rated prospect ever, according to some people. I just want to see it happen. But let's get into the top 8 here, man. There's a lot of guys that there's not a lot of big differences here as far as our rankings. At the bottom, we have 3 different guys with 3 spot differences. But again, all these guys are elite quarterbacks. All of these guys you could pretty much put on most teams in the league, and they're going to be contention worthy because this is their quarterback. At number 8, though, is Jay Herbo, a guy that moves down on both of our lists by one spot each. Because Justin Herbert, look, he had a great year. He protected the football, best year of his career in that department. I think he had the
Yeah.
most effective year of his career, despite the statistics maybe coming down a little bit. But the system that he's in is very quarterback friendly, and when you got a guy like that, I think it has the potential to be special because in a system like that, you just need that quarterback to make that throw or those couple throws throughout the game that, if the offense gets behind or if they can't run the ball that great, you got that special of a quarterback where he can keep you ahead of the chains, is basically what I'm trying to get at here, and make those special throws every once in a while when your team needs it. But at the end of the day, that playoff performance did turn me off a little bit about Justin
Yeah.
Herbert.
Yeah.
I think he's special. I still got him as a top six quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think you throw him in Philly, he wins the Super Bowl. But
Yeah.
that playoff performance it hurt him a lot, Amir.
Yeah, and for me too, I thought Herbert was a victim of his own success. He completely overachieved, exceeded expectations. I mean, I want to say we had the Chargers winning around 9 games, 8 games, barely missing the playoffs, and they went ahead and clinched a playoff spot, early in the season. So, the problem I have is like, if Herbert loses is one thing. I don't bash quarterbacks for losing, but I more so see, how much impact do they have on their team's loss. And I thought he was a direct impact on his team losing. I mean, he threw 4 interceptions. He played horrible in that second half of the game, and this is the second terrible play performance that we've seen from him. And I want to say last year had him at 6. I'm a big Herbo believer. Casual fans might call us crazy for still believing in this guy. But it's like I kind of just look back at even the first game where they blew up the 21-0 lead or whatever.
Against
Um,
Jacksonville.
yeah,
That was
and so for me, it's really tough for me to really have them even higher. And also, I said it earlier, I think really 5 through 10 are all interchangeable.
yeah, absolutely. Again, when you talk about the elite of the elite, you can move these guys anywhere. At 7, I think he's the most scrutinized quarterback outside of Patrick Mahomes in the league today. Jalen Hurts, of course, now a Super Bowl champion, led the Eagles to the promised land, and they finally got over the hump. But Amir, I think the reason why we don't look at just Jalen Hurts as valuable as other people is because of how loaded the roster is. And that's not Jalen Hurts' fault. But to
Yeah,
me, it goes beyond that. I think I trust the overall talent of Justin Herbert more than Jalen Hurts.
yeah.
And that's not to say that Jalen Hurts is a bad quarterback. There's a one spot difference between those guys on my list. But I think there is a bit of a tier break. I think Justin Herbert could have did everything that Hurts did,
I think
maybe
he could have too.
better. Honestly, I think they have the number one seed in the NFC. If Justin Herbert's our quarterback over Jalen Hurts, Amir, is that a crazy take for me to say that about Jalen Hurts, who just had a crazy playoff, just a crazy season in general, and came out on top?
Not at all, man. I think, bro, if you put Herbert on that offense, man, like the pass game is opened up even more. Like instead of
Yes,
them, hey, exactly, like instead of them scoring 55 points in the NFC Championship, they score like 70.
yeah, 55 points is crazy though. I mean that game was
That
literally
is
just give
crazy.
the ball to Saquon and he does whatever he
Yeah.
wanted to do. But Jalen Hurts again, incredible player, incredible season. I just don't think he is. I don't think he's. I think there's 6 guys in this league where you throw them on any team, and I
Yeah.
look at them as Super Bowl contenders. I don't think
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is there yet. He's right outside of that for me. But again, personal opinion. At 5A5B, Matthew Stafford is an incredible quarterback, but he's right below that 6 range as well, Amir. But still, we have him at 5A5B with CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud did the most he could this year with what he had. Did they start the year the greatest? No. But I think with all the injuries that they had, with Nico Collins missing some time, multiple offensive linemen missing some time, Joe Mixon, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs all had significant injuries, and they missed some time. For him to go out this year with a depleted offense and still have a all-pro level year, even though he wasn't, I think was impressive. And again, last year I wasn't as high on him. This year I saw all that I needed to. I wanted to see how he bounces back after teams have this film on him. And he struggled early on, but he bounced back and had a great second half to the season. That's why I got him as a top 5 guy. Matthew Stafford, former Super Bowl champion. Apparently, he might be on the move. Amir, your thoughts on these two?
I'm being completely honest, man. I really have Stafford at 5, and people might call me crazy, but I think he's still a great quarterback, man. And watching this year, this is the second year in a row where we've seen his team be decimated by injuries the first
Yeah.
half of the year.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the year, we're looking like, yo, like this team could could actually go and win it all. And I watched him in that game against Philly. Man, he played like an all-time level quarterback. He straight up carried that team, put the team on his back. They couldn't even run the ball really in the fourth quarter. He sat back in the pocket and honestly was a couple plays away from going to the Super Bowl. And so, and the thing about Stroud as well is, so last year I believe I had Stroud at 9, I believe
You
around
had him
that
at
mark.
6 last year.
I had Stroud at 6.
Yes, you had Stroud at 6. I had him at 13.
Oh wow, I had him at 6 then. So for me, for Stroud, I thought Slovic was a terrible O coordinator this year. I thought
Yeah.
the offense was really, really bad. For all the talent that they had all the injuries and stuff like that. It's just I continue to keep on saying it, man. I just think 5 through 10 is all interchangeable. At this point, I believe you have tier 1, the guy 2 through 4, and then 5 through 10, all guys can be switched. And for Stroud, he just didn't show me enough to really put him, at that 5 barrier.
All right, now we get into the top 4. We know these guys. We've referenced these guys, but where do they sit? At number 4 or 3B, 3A, Amir, you might be shocked. You might be shocked because of the arguments that we have and the debates that we have. That's a better word. About the best quarterback, because we don't really count Patrick Mahomes. And I said after this past year, the other guy deserved it. So Lamar Jackson, we'll get to them in a minute. Lamar Jackson, let's kick it off with him. Second best offensive line in the NFL, Amir. Incredible season. Probably should have had the MVP award, but it did not go his way. Still, it was an incredible year. I think it was the best passing year from him as far as a comfortability and just an impact with his arm, despite still not having a number 1 wide receiver. He doesn't have a number 1 option, Amir. Mark Andrews is past his prime and he's had injuries. Isaiah Likely might have been his number 1 option this year, and he's a backup tight end. But again, you add Derrick Henry to this offense, and I just think that he's making Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, he's making Likely, Andrews at this point in his career look better than what they are. And you can make the argument that if Mark Andrews caught 2 or 3 balls in the playoffs, that this team makes it to the Final Four and has a chance to go to the Super Bowl for the second year in a row. He's a special player, maybe the best dual threat quarterback of all time. Your thoughts on number 8?
So, for Lamar, I believe this roster is still better constructed than the 2 guys, honestly, 3 guys above him. Mark Andrews, really when he came back from injury, he looked horrible. But really, like the second half of the season, he looked amazing. I want to say he had double-digit TDs this year. I was really looking at Lamar's season, and Lamar played amazing. Just for me, it's the same problems, we say every year, where it's like, once the regular season ends and it goes, into the playoffs, it's almost like it's a dip as far as his performances. And it's like, as good as he played in that second half against the Bills, I mean, it's the same problem that he had last year too, where we started the game off slow. Second half came out fire. Now I'm looking at that game and I'm like, he's had 2 multiple turnover games in the past 2 years, and they're both in the playoffs. And so, for me, really, for Lamar, I mean, he has 2 top 10 tight ends in my opinion, a top 3 offensive line, 2 receivers who led PFF in separation rate against man-to-man, I believe, and having Derrick Henry. And the defense honestly played really good the second half of the year too. And so, for me, I think the reason why I'm critical on Lamar is because this roster is Super Bowl ready right now. Like, this roster could legitimately go all the way and legitimately win, in my opinion.
Yeah. Again, hard to argue, especially when you talk about these top guys. Lamar, again, like I mentioned, maybe the best dual threat quarterback of all time, but we want to see him get over that hump eventually, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, because again, it gets harder the later in your career, unless you're Tom Brady. Joe Burrow at 3A. I got him at 3. You got him at 4. So you're actually the reason why he's tied here with Lamar Jackson. I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. But to me, look, Joe Burrow, it just wasn't a great year. And I've said this since the beginning of this podcast. I don't believe in Zach Taylor. I don't think he's a good head coach. And you have a year this year where nothing went right for the Cincinnati Bengals. You had a lot of injuries. You had a lot of inconsistencies. Cincinnati had the 3rd worst offensive line in the league, as well as they were up there for some of the most combinations. So there just never was a sense of comfortability in this offense. But still, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase said, get on our backs. We're going to try and make this thing work. They ended the year winning like 6 of their last 7, 5 straight. And they had a chance at the playoffs, but they don't know how to start the year off in the first 6 weeks. decent. It seems like they're always under 500 after the first month and a half of the year. But despite all of that, he had an incredible stretch, and there was times where no matter who you are, he looked like the best quarterback in the league second half of the year, doing what he was doing with what he had. And T. Higgins again did not play many games this year for the Bengals, so it was really you had a number one wide receiver that was doubled almost all the time, and Joe Burrow was trying to make everything else work with Andre Yoshivas. I think my point is stated there. The defense wasn't great. Cincinnati's a mess right now because they don't want to pay their players. They are the
I was going to say the
AFC
same
version.
exact thing.
They are the AFC version of the Dallas Cowboys because they don't want to play. They don't want to pay any
Literally.
quality players. But Amir, your thoughts on Joe Burrow? I know it might come as a shock. I've been on the Joe Burrow is the second best player in the league train since the beginning of the year that they went to the Super Bowl. Your thoughts on Joe Burrow being tied with Lamar Jackson?
The thing that's really disappointing about the Bengals, like, since you pay your players, stop being cheap, pay your players, and
Yes.
just focus on drafting better. Be like Philly, draft better and pay your players. There's no reason why. This is the second year in a row where you're in this dispute with T. Higgins, going to franchise tag him, and do all this crap. Trey Hendrickson wants to get paid, and you're going to trade him or whatever. Pay your players and stop
Yeah,
being
he just
cheap.
had 17 and a half sacks, and they're contemplating if they should trade him or not.
Seriously, like seriously. And so, for the Bengals, you know, um, Burrow definitely does get criticism for starting slow, but it's not only his fault; it's Zach Taylor's fault as well. And I said this before, where it's like, in the AFC North, where every single game is going to be tough. I don't care if every other team wins 3 games combined. Every single divisional game is going to be tough in the AFC North.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
for the Bengals, week one, you go ahead and Burrow, Zach Taylor, the defense, they all play bad against New England. Lose that game. Week two, playing against Kansas City, they had the ball. They could have went down and really scored and put the game away. Then Joe Burrow has a fumble 6, and then after that, I mean, they literally lose to the Ravens on 2 critical mistakes. Twice, and it's like, they really start the year off way too slow, and this is a major problem not only for Burrow but the whole entire team, as well. And honestly, came back to haunt them. I mean, they went ahead and played crazy that second half of the season, completely just dominated that elite Broncos defense, but it still fell short because they simply just started off too slow.
Yeah.
And so, for Burrow, in my opinion, he had the best season, stat wise. Lamar fans love to go ahead and use the MVP argument about stats when it's like they completely forget about the fact that Burrow by far had the best stats, in my opinion. I mean, he had 800 more passing yards and led the league in passing touchdowns. I want to say he had a higher completion percentage, than Lamar. And so, that stat argument for Lamar is completely dead. I mean, Burrow had an amazing year, and we have to really, realize that, honestly, in tier one, it's Mahomes, and people completely forget. And then after that, really 2 through 4, those 3 guys are going to change from here on out on a year-to-year basis.
If Mahomes won the Super Bowl this year, Amir, I would have asked you to say rank the top 32 quarterbacks, not including number 15.
Yeah.
But I mean, at number 2, I want to start. It's Josh Allen, okay? Josh Allen, and then Mahomes is at 1. We don't even need to talk about Mahomes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Super Bowl is not a reflection of who he's going to be going forward. He's going to be fine. He's going to be the number 1 quarterback in the league for the next 10 years, probably, until Jordan Love takes over. At least that's what I hope. But for Josh Allen, I wanted to. The point in the season, Amir, where I actually said, okay, Josh Allen's probably better than Joe Burrow. It was that Rams game, and they lost. But when I was sitting there and I was thinking about it, I'm like, just what he was doing that game. I mean, what do you have, 6 touchdowns?
Yeah,
I believe.
I think he had like 6 passing touchdowns. He had like 350 yards passing, something crazy like that.
Despite not having the win, I was looking at that game and I was saying that game's up there for some of the greatest quarterback performances I've ever seen. Right? It's up there with Vic against the Redskins at the time on prime time. It's up there with Brady in the 28-3 game. Or, hey, Brady in that Super Bowl against the Eagles where he had like 550 passing yards and lost. I'm not sure. Again, I would have to go through the history and look at these games. But that, to me, when I was watching it, I said, he might be the best player on the planet. And again, I've never had any bad ill will against Josh Allen. There is a video that my family has where on draft night in 18 or something, for one, I said, Baker Mayfield, if we draft him, I'm not a Browns fan. Here we are. And then I said, I want both Joshes. I wanted Josh Allen and I wanted Bradley Chubb. So again, I was wrong. Not two Joshes, but I wanted. Oh yeah, two Joshes. I wanted Josh Allen or Josh Rosen as the quarterback for the Browns, and then I wanted Bradley Chubb. But I've never been. I've never. I just didn't think that Josh Allen had that takeover, that it ability as high as Joe Burrow. That game against the Rams solidified it. And again, I know he's been great in his career, but that game against the Rams was so special, despite the loss, that I moved him above Joe Burrow in my quarterback rankings. Amir, it's your favorite player in the league, maybe. Your thoughts on number 17?
It's crazy because the great year Lamar had, about 3 quarters through the season, I was leaning towards Lamar. I'm like, these numbers are too crazy. But then, really, once that Rams game came, I sat and
Dude,
I
it,
watched the
it was
game.
that special.
I sat and I watched the game, and I was just like, this dude, he's not only, carrying this team because I mean, me and you both have Buffalo missing the playoffs, and for me, I like to really, make the MVP argument for guys that are more valuable, to their team's success, and seeing this Buffalo team, not only be good, but they were on like historic heights. I want to say they averaged 3 points per drive, which is like top five in history,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's without an 1,000 yard receiver and also an 1,000 yard running back. Now James Cook had like 1,009 yards, but like that's not normal. Like you don't average 3 points per drive without an 1,000 yard receiver and a guy that runs for only 1,009 yards. Like that's crazy. And also add to the fact that I mean he literally set 11 quarters of football. And I'm looking at his numbers too, and I'm like, the reason why he's not throwing for 45 touchdowns and 4,000 yards is simply because this Joe Brady scheme is meant for him to kind of take a back seat,
Yeah.
throughout the season. And so I believe if Joe Brady really has to find a balance of letting him off the leash to take over games like that, but also having him be smart and take care of the football. And it's like it's even crazier because that game where he had 6 touchdowns the next week, he threw for 360 and 4 touchdowns in Detroit, and beat the second one seed of the year. And so, I really sat down and came to the conclusion where it's like, really, 2 through 4, they're going to change on a year to year basis. Like that's at this point, it's really like 2A, 2B, 2C.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, hurts me to say it, but again, I'm still a big Joe Burrow fan. Let me clarify that. But Josh Allen this year, I think cemented himself again. I don't even think we mentioned again the MVP of the league, Josh Allen. We didn't even mention that, just
The
casually.
thing that's funny too, though, the thing that's funny is like, you know, people quickly forget how great Mahomes is. Like who cares about that game in the Super Bowl? He's still Mahomes, and it's like, you got Buffalo fans that are like, oh, Josh Allen's the MVP. He has his fifth straight year of scoring 40 plus touchdowns. You got Joe Burrow fans that are like, oh, he's the only one to beat Mahomes. His team was arguably the worst out of the three, and he put up historic numbers. You got Lamar fans that are like, oh, he threw for a better passer rating than Aaron Rodgers. His MVP seasons when it's like, these three fan bases are literally arguing for who's second.
Yeah,
Mahomes is still one. You guys are literally
that's a
arguing
great
for
point.
who's in second place at the end of the day.
I mean, it's something that I think we look over, and I think that's like, and when you look at other sports, you're looking at who's better, right? You're looking at who's better, Jordan or LeBron, probably the best two basketball players of all time. But when you look at the world of football, you're looking at Messi, Ronaldo. Okay, you're looking at like arguably number one, number two. In current day NFL, we're not even including the number one player in
We are.
conversations. Even when Brady was in the league, you still had some people saying, I think Peyton Manning might have an argument. And then when Rodgers started to win, what, three, four MVPs in his career, they were like, on any given year, Rodgers is better than Brady. There's no
Exactly.
conversations now. And that's
It's
saying,
not.
and that's after we just talked about Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar, and the fact that me and you have had countless paragraphs worth of arguments. I mean, you summed it up perfectly. We're arguing about who's number two.
And the thing that's really crazy too about Brady was like, you brought up a great point. He went a 10-year stretch without winning anything. The reason why Brady cemented himself was because like the back end of his career when he won 3, 4 rings.
Yes.
That's when he really cemented himself. But like there was a period of time where Brady wasn't even really close to the GOAT debate. Like they were legitimately arguing.
Yep.
It was Montana, then it was like Brady, Peyton, all those guys, after that. But
It was
really
a group. Yeah.
that second stretch was when, Brady really, proved himself to be the GOAT. And, for Mahomes, people are looking at these two losses as just, ways to sustain his career and just completely remove him. I mean, the dude has only been starting since 2018, still has, 3 rings, 3 Super Bowl MVPs. Like he legitimately could finish for 8, 9 rings.
Yeah, I mean, he already has. I mean, so many playoff records to his name. The only ones that he doesn't have is Super Bowl wins and again, like overall passing yards and stuff. But if he goes to, let's say, 5 Super Bowls, he's gonna pass Brady in pretty much all of those metrics because of the different era of football. Um, but yeah, I mean, Mahomes is special. I don't, I just, it's mind-boggling that 31 other teams didn't see the same potential that Andy Reid saw, and they were able to trade up and find their guy for the next 20 years. Amir,
And
I do want to ask you this.
I would say this too. I really sat down and thought about this next generation of QBs. Man, like give it about 5 years. This is going to be the most talented the quarterback position has ever been in football. I
Yep.
mean, like you have these four quarterbacks. All four of them are going to be first ballot Hall of Famers in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, you literally got Stroud, Hurts, Herbert, Jordan Love, and then you have the three rookie quarterbacks
I like that you
in
mentioned
Drake
Jordan Love.
May, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix. All three of those guys are also going to be great. I mean, like we legitimately are going to have 10 great quarterbacks in this
Trevor
league.
Lawrence, if he can figure it out.
Now, seriously, man, like the three rookies from this past season, with Drake May, Caleb, and Jaden Daniels, all three of them are going to be special. And these top four quarterbacks, I mean, really, like you're going to have 8 to 10 quarterbacks that are truly going to cement themselves as great quarterbacks in this league for a long time.
Before we get out of here, I'm going to ask you something, Amir, of course, and I'll let you talk about it as at home if you're watching here on YouTube. I'm going to run through these rankings yet again. Again, I'll go through the bottom eight and the middle eight or the middle 16 and then the top eight. And as we do that, Amir, I want to ask you, out of everybody on the list, or hey, maybe it's a rookie quarterback that we see shoot to the top because Stroud did it 2 years ago and Jaden Daniels did it this past year. What quarterback do you think will rise the most on this list? It could be a veteran, it can be a rookie, but who do you think is going to rise the most going into next year? Again, it's a meaningless prediction, but hey, I mean, if you're right, and you look like a genius.
Honestly, the guy I think that'll rise the most is really Caleb. And the reason why he has Ben Johnson. The offense, still has great talent. The defense is still great when they actually lock in and learn how to play football. I think Caleb will cement himself. If not a borderline top 10 quarterback, a top 10 quarterback, and the talent is honestly there. And I think people sort of disrespect him because it's Caleb. He's most hated. He paint his nails. All these shenanigans. He's a bad leader. Quote unquote. People like to paint him as. And I think people really forget. In my opinion, he's still a top 5 talented quarterback in this league. His arm talent is completely generational. Something crazy that we've never seen before. I'm coming in as a rookie, and so the talent is there, the offense is there, the coach is now there, in my opinion, and I think he's going to have a breakout year.
You know my pick. I mean, it's the guy in Green Bay. I think the guy, and that's saying a lot because he's already at number 10. I think he could jump in the top five, again, number five, but I think he could jump into those conversations next year. But I mean, hey, who's my other prediction? Shador Sanders, if he goes number 2 to the Cleveland Browns, he's going to
Oh, yeah.
be top 5 in the league next year. And of course, the Browns are going to figure it out, and we're probably not going to ruin another young and talented quarterback that comes into the league. But
Now,
Amir,
honestly, I would say this too. A guy that I hope he doesn't get disrespected because I think his team is going to play worse next year is Jaden Daniels. I think his team is going to play worse.
I
There's
think he
still
will
so
take a
many
step
holes
back.
in this roster, and a season like this is so hard to replicate whenever you have lackluster talent. And if they don't make moves in the offseason, draft well, and really improve this roster, I think that the Commanders will honestly be worse. Possibly miss the playoffs. And I hope people don't use that to sort of discredit how great he is as a player.
As I briefly mentioned kind of earlier, it's kind of like a seesaw with these rookie players in general, but really quarterbacks, where, of course, when nobody's on a seesaw, it's completely balanced. And then if they come out and have a great season, it's like if you were to just sit on one end of the seesaw. And then after they kind of come back down to earth, even if it's not a bad season, like CJ Stroud just had, it's like you just get off. And then all of a sudden it's lopsided again. Well, I guess they would return to balance. Basically what I'm saying is like it's a very up and down roller coaster ride with these young quarterbacks. It's like if they're the new shiny toy that overproduces, we want to shoot them to the moon. And then if they come
Yeah,
back down to earth, and if they don't continue to go on this insane trajectory, we're just all of a sudden, well, actually, they're not that good. Actually, CJ
I
Stroud
hate
is
it
not
so
really a
much.
top 10 guy. It's
Yeah,
just
like seriously, I hate it so much. I thought people did that with Jordan Love last year. Like let the dude develop, let him have a few more seasons. Like last year was basically his rookie season, and same thing with Stroud. People put him at borderline top five. I was one of those guys that might have put him a little higher, but
I'm not
Jordan
gonna lie, I
Love,
did. I had him at number 6. I'm
yeah,
in that camp.
yeah, but it's like, for us though, like when a player doesn't, show up his second season, we still show him grace, but the casual fans, the casual analysts, like, I mean, they couldn't wait to slander Jordan Love, after his terrible player performance against Philly. And it's like, it's your guys' fault that you put unrealistic expectations on guys. This relax it and let them develop first.
Yeah. I mean, Mahomes is getting he's basically being told that if he wins the next 10 Super Bowls, it doesn't matter because he lost against Philly, so there's no way he could ever be in the conversation with Brady again. It's funny how sports media wants
Yeah.
perfection out of their players. Um, I don't know. Apparently, in that logic, Rodgers is nowhere near being a top 10 guy all time, quarterback wise, because he lost so many times in the playoffs. Um,
Man, like he had some moments against San Fran where he completely played horrible. I mean, think about his last year in Green Bay, or second to last year where he basically went scoreless for like three straight quarters and played horrible. You think about when they got blown out by 40 or by like 30, I think, in San Fran. A couple years before that.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's funny how sports media works because it's really the most toxic media outside of probably politics.
Yeah.
But Amir, that's gonna do it, man. Episode 257. It is the yearly quarterback show. I do want to throw it out there that I did recently create a NFL draft channel. Of course, I've been uploading a lot of videos over there, and I will link that in the comments. Mock draft I have coming on tomorrow, actually, so Wednesday, yeah. But again, let me know your guys' predictions down below. How do your lists look here? Last year, you guys, there was like 30 comments of everybody dropping their list. I'll get back to every single comment. So drop your comment down below and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Amir, any last thoughts about this year's quarterback list?
Nope, no thoughts.
Well, we'll be back next week and we'll have a lot of fun stuff coming up here because it's the off season and this is where we get into controversial things. But until next week, stay happy, stay healthy, get out of here.